everybody. I want to start by reminding councillors that this is a public meeting, so please be mindful of your actions and your comments. You should avoid making statements that may defame or offend, and note that a recording of this meeting will be retained online and in council's archives. Please turn your mobile phones off or switch to silent. Filming and photography are not permitted in the meeting. Anyone observed to be filming the meeting may be asked to leave. I now declare the meeting open at 7:01 p.m, noting this is the official second meeting of the Governance and Finance Committee, as it is a quarterly meeting. We have had a request for a councillor to join via audiovisual, which was Councillor Castles. However, I cannot see her in the meeting presently. However, she may wish to join at a future time. Therefore, I'm happy to move that we allow Councillor Castles to join, noting that she may wish to join later. If I have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor McGregor. Unanimous from the members. So for introduction, warm welcome to everybody in attendance and those watching along at home tonight. I'm sure there is a cast of thousands. I will start by acknowledging the country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we live, work and play. We pay our respects to Jung country and elders past and present. We recognise the continued connection to these lands, waterways, and extend this acknowledgement to the homelands and stories of those who call this place home. We recognise our future leaders and the shared responsibility to care for, protect our place and people. I'll now call for any apologies for this meeting. Noting I have received an apology in writing from Mayor McKenna. Do I have any other apologies to note? Thank you. That in mind, I will move that. Noting Councillor McKenna's apology. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Eaton. And all of those in favour? Unanimous. Now move on to item 1.2, which is disclosures of interest. I'll start by asking committee members to disclose any conflict of interest they may have in the items on tonight's agenda. Firstly, myself, I can confirm that I do not have any conflicts to declare for this meeting. Councillor Crowley.
I have nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Councillor McGregor.
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Eaton.
Also nothing.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any of the non-voting members here tonight wish to make a declaration? Thank you all. I will now move on to item 1.3, which is a confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. I now call for a move for the recommendation as the motion. Thank you, Councillor Eaton and Councillor McGregor as a seconder. I now put the motion. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Noting that is unanimous. Item 1.4, items resolved by exception. As I call out the names of the items, please advise if you wish to star an item to be discussed tonight. Items that are not starred to be discussed will be resolved en masse, meaning the committee is resolving the recommendations contained within the reports. I do want to make a quick note as well. Having spoken to the staff, I will move a motion to defer item 1.5, being Council's investment management strategy. We had the preparers of that report, Perpetual Advisory, earmarked to speak tonight. However, they've had to pull out at last minute. So I'm happy to move that be deferred.
There's also 25 drop today plus a anticipated further, so they may want to amend their strategy.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. In fact, I think reading the macro outlook of that report, they had factored in multiple interest rate cuts before the end of the year. So I'm trying to think, would it be easier to move the deferral first or yeah, so I might move that as a procedural motion that we defer item 1.5 until the next meeting, given the previous reasons. Being a procedural motion, I don't need a seconder, so I'm happy to put that straight to a vote if everyone's happy. Yep. Those in favour? Unanimous. So
before you move off that, the other thing I'd like to see, since it's been deferred now,
is some analysis of what the change in investment strategy would actually likely mean in terms of the return to council.
Sure.
But it did like in terms of, it's $10,000 or it's $100,000. I mean, obviously I don't expect it to be down to the last $1,000.
Is this in terms of interest rate risk and how that's impacting return?
Well, what the report, as I understood it, provided for is basically a slight move away from higher risk products
Sure.
to lower risk products, which then obviously means a slight reduction in interest received and therefore a reduction in the amount of income we're going to get.
Sure. And I think our first rate cut in the cycle was back in February from memory, and our lovely CFO, Emma, has kindly previously provided me with some information about our interest rate returns between February and the end of financial year. I'm happy to pass that on to you.
Yeah, we should note that though we've actually already made that decision through our policy. This is only a strategy that follows up that policy.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, it's just,
We can ask
You
them
know,
to do that. I know.
yeah, it's just information,
I wouldn't, I mean, you may as well distribute it to all councillors.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. And I'm happy to share that information I received about the interest rate difference in earnings as well with all councillors present here and all councillors in general. So with that, on item 1.4, items resolved by exception. As I call out the items, please let me know if you'd like them to be discussed this evening. I'll start with item 1.
Sorry, Jared, before you do that, is there any presentations the staff are prepared to do? Are there any items the staff are prepared for presentations for? Because if they've done the work to prepare for them, I think we should listen to the presentation.
Sure. My understanding is we have a presentation for, well, not really not so much presentation, but item 1.6, which is the agency information guide. Director Rakamallara is happy to speak to that. I would also, given he is here, we should speak to 1.7 as Director Loader has some material which he can speak to. Item 1.8, comprehensive reevaluation of roads and drainage infrastructure assets. There's no presentation on that. Item 1.9, I was going to star anyway, but there isn't too much in the way of presentation. That's more background information, which I think is in the report. Item 1.10, notice of motion, I was going to star that,
Yeah, I understand.
noting there is a report.
We also have Bill Ignatius here, who has prepared some additional information if you're interested.
Yeah, so we also then have item 1.11, which is the financial results, which Director Rakamallara and Emma can speak to. And then we will discuss item 2.1 as well, which Emma can provide a report on, which is in relation to the audit office interim. So in terms of a presentation, the main ones in that regard would be item 1.7, Director Loader, if you have a presentation to provide or some brief information.
No, not really. It's really like I'm here to answer any questions and just give a brief explanation of what the policy is, but there's no presentation essentially.
Sure. So I'll go back to the items listed by exception, and happy for people to call out the items as they see fit, noting those reports on certain items. So does anyone wish to discuss item 1.6 in relation to the agency information guide for adoption?
Is that one of the ones we had a presentation on?
No. So we're happy to move that en masse.
So could I just ask you, is there further work to be done on that? Or I thought in reading it,
The agency information guide.
yeah. Or is that finalised? Is that the final version?
That's the final version, but it is constantly under review and we formally review it and re-adopt it annually.
Okay.
Sure. Does anybody wish to speak to item 1.7, which is the water and sewer works in kind policy review?
I'll at least ask a question, just see what the changes are.
Question.
Sure, not a problem. So we will discuss item 1.7. Item 1.8, comprehensive reevaluation of roads and drainage infrastructure asset classes. That's the item which pertains to the asset values of those assets and how they're audited. Does anyone wish to speak to those? Councillor Eaton. I would like to raise item 1.9, noting I did submit it as a notice of motion, so I'm happy to speak to that. I'm also happy to call item 1.10 relating to better utilising and monitoring Gosford City Car Park, as I did move that original notice of motion back in March at the ordinary council meeting. Item 1.11, 2024-25 financial year results status update. Does anyone wish to speak to that?
Probably covered by the confidential, isn't it?
Yes.
It's actually, it's the actual result rather than. I'd actually like to. put it briefly on.
Yeah, sure. And item 2.1, I will call, noting that there'll be a procedural motion at that time as well. So the only items that we're moving en masse will be item 1.6,
So moved.
which is the Agency Information Guide, moved by Councillor Eden. I'm happy to second that. All those in favour? Unanimous. Perfect. That takes us now.
Sorry, can we get voting on deferring?
Oh, okay, can I just get a quick vote on deferring item 1.5 until the next council meeting, which is on the investment management strategy. I'm just going to show of hands. Thank you, everybody. That's unanimous. So happy to move on to item 1.7, water and sewer works, client policy review.
So I'll move the recommendation. As I said, I've just really got a question as to what, if anything, has changed in relation to the policy.
Sure.
So I'm happy, just a quick overview of the policy, how it came to be and what we're actually doing. So this policy came in around mid 2021. It was on the back of New South Wales Audit Office doing an audit of developer contributions across a number of councils across the state, and it captured water and sewer developer contributions as well. This policy was developed to strengthen the governance around works in kind that was done under those developer service charges. We've had around 10 agreements that we've entered into since the policy's been in place. Around $20 million worth that's delivered by developers and funded through that mechanism. What it does is enables us to deliver assets in appropriate time when the developer is ready to have those assets in place, rather than us going off building sewer pump stations where there's no demand or anything like that. So it follows that natural pattern of development and delivers some efficiencies in terms of the civil contractors on site building a subdivision. They can be putting those water and sewer assets in at the same time, and it saves us from having to do that. Council delivers the brownfield asset upgrades to support growth, as well as major regional growth assets such as the Muddy Vale pipeline and Charmhaven sewage treatment plant upgrade, while the Wickers are really just for greenfield, the subdivisions, those sorts of things. In terms of changes to the policy, not a lot in policy itself, just new template, references to legislation, those sorts of tidy up things. Where the main changes were is in the guideline that supports the policy. And we've just incorporated using quantity surveyors to assist assessing infrastructure costs and managing contingencies and those sorts of things. So we're proposing not to go on public exhibition with the policy. There's really not a lot that the community can influence in terms of that. It's really, this guides developers and those stakeholders that are delivering those larger scale assets. And in terms of engagement there, we've engaged with the UDIA on the development online to make sure that it's fit for purpose. So if there's any other questions.
Questions to Director Loader? You have a question?
Yes.
Sure, Councillor Crowley.
I was talking to a bill about a specific issue, but can you explain to me about
issues around the older suburbs. And this is not, I'm not having a bad case. But he was explaining to me that in the older suburbs, because the coast sort of grew up, I've been starting out as a holiday place and then ending up, growing a lot of places, particularly this, what we were talking about was areas too clean. He was saying that because it's built on a floodplain and the older houses don't have much in the way of drainage pipes. And some of the streets don't have stormwater. I just wanted to know if that's correct, firstly.
They have a form of stormwater disposal, whether it's, may not be curb, maybe culverts or
there's
heavy
culverts,
rains and things like that.
Yeah. But they do block up with the stuff and then. So he was saying that it would be an impossible task to map the whole of the coast, the central coast, and figure out where all these non-pipes are and so on and so forth. And it would take millions of years to get it done. But I'm just wondering if there's any plan to kind of slowly but surely put drainage pipes into, or does that take curbing and guttering the street first?
So for starters, that's a question.
$64 question, is it?
Well, it's also not water and sewer. We're talking about stormwater drainage. It
Yeah,
fits in the infrastructure services.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably question better answered by Director Bolgoff.
Oh,
But,
okay.
I guess we understand where all of our assets are. That probably may not be common knowledge for speaking to, but we do know where they are, and we replace the existing as.
It just made sense to me once, because it was a problem I was trying to deal with.
Sure. Yeah.
It just made a lot of sense, and it did actually solve it.
Where it's flat land, it's difficult to get fall and those sorts of things sometimes, and a place of discharge. But
I mean, he did say that in the new station.
Yeah.
And everything's it's up to scratch, but I imagine it probably a lot of Australians like this. And the other thing that he said was, I don't want to take up too much time, but I think this is really interesting. He said that Australia's always been a very dry country, and with all the rain that we're getting now and climate change and so on, there's more water. It's more water to be disposed of, and that's.
yeah, it's probably more intense rainfall that we're getting. So that would have to be factored into the design of those sorts of systems.
Very much.
Perfect. Do I have any other questions? I do note that Councillor Eaton has already put the recommendation. Do I have a seconder for that? Okay, I'm happy to second it. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
I think that, but
You can try.
the spontaneously want to put my hand up.
Thank you. I will note that's unanimous. Which means we can move on to item 1.8, which is a comprehensive reevaluation of roads and drainage infrastructure asset classes. I will invite the CFO, Emma Galea, to make a brief comment if she'd wish, or a presentation if she'd wish as well.
Chair. So the report summarizes that we have to, on a cyclical basis, do a comprehensive evaluation of our asset classes. So for 24-25, we look at the roads and drainage infrastructure assets. So it's an audit requirement and accounting standards requirement. The reason this was brought to this committee is the evaluation did result in some significant financial impacts. So essentially the value of the assets themselves has increased by just under 1 billion. And what that means in terms of the depreciation expense, that's increased by 8.4 million. However, we had already budgeted for that. So once there is an impact, there's no issue in terms of with having to identify those funds that already allowed for it. The process itself, we have used external valuers. So we had an internal working group between finance and the roads and drainage assets area. We got external condition audits done as well. So, and essentially it was predominantly the work was done by the external valuer, and then there was back and forth ways to make sure that all the information is correct. So it is probably out of all the asset classes, this is one of the most significant ones because it is quite large. And in terms of timing, it's actually being completed quite in a good time in terms of it's already with the audit office well in advance of when they're doing the final audit. So they have had an initial look at it, and there has been no issues raised to date, but there may be things identified as they look into it.
Thank you. One question I did have, because, obviously as councillors, we get asked a lot about, the need to repair our roads and, I think sometimes the community might have a bit of a misunderstanding on the cost of some of this. And I know previously in some of our workshops, we've gone through the sort of cost of our road assets. Does this report, and you can take it on notice, have a cost of, or a net asset value for all of our road assets, for example?
So yes, essentially the net book value, I think it's in the table here. So before the revaluation, the net book value was 3.6. After the revaluation, it's 4.5. I am billion, sorry.
Is that roads and drainage or just roads?
Yeah, so it's essentially bridges, bulk earthworks, footpaths, roads, stormwater drainage. So a big drive, so there's a few drivers into this. Obviously the condition which drives the useful life of the assets, but also the unit rates. So the whole idea of presenting or reporting assets at fair value, which came in many years ago, is to make sure that our depreciation expense reflects the cost of replacement when we come to do it. So that's the logic behind it. So that's why that 8.4 million is essentially what that's telling us. It's gonna cost us that much more. Of depreciation, and therefore if we are renewing, so our model is to try and renew in pace with depreciation. So that's some modeling that we need to do now. What does our renewal number need to look like to make sure that we keep up?
So just to clarify, do you have a rough costing of what our road assets are valued at? Just the road assets?
Just the roads. So roads on their own is 2.5.
Yeah, because I seem to remember the initial stats we looked at when we were first elected on council were about 2 billion. So, 2.5 billion then seems like a pretty fair assumption. But I think, for the community, it shows the size and scale of what we have to work with. And while we might like every road to be in tip-top condition all the time, it shows the cost associated with that. So I find that very useful. Thank you. Any other questions for?
It's gone up quite a lot, hasn't it, with the revaluation?
Yeah, and I suppose it's a good opportunity for us to reset our information in terms of condition and useful life. So it was quite, there was a lot of on the ground work of actually visibly citing the assets. This process has been going on since September, so it's quite involved in terms of the condition assessment bit and then all that.
Councillor Eaton?
Couple of questions through you, Mr. Chair. So in all of these assets, got the land involved. So how do we value the land? The road, under the bridge, which is of course part of can't have the road without the land, but on the other hand, you can't sell the land and it's got very little in the way of value.
Yeah, so essentially it's quite complex. I'll try and kind of keep it simple, but there's an element of it that is captured in the bulk earthwork. So that's the kind of works that technically don't really have to redo again because once you kind of form the road. And then in terms of Yeah, the land itself, I suppose, because you've changed it into a road, it becomes part of that. So it's not, there is no separate value for land under, there is land under road, so I'll correct that, and that is reported, but it's not actually part of this. So what
So it's really not part of the valuation. The valuation is
No.
really
It's the work.
the carrying part.
That's right, yeah.
And in terms of the lifespan of these assets, how often do we kind of review that? I guess what I'm thinking of, and this is long term, but these are long term assets, is what happens with electric vehicles, which are heavier in general, and then if you go to the Elon Musk view of the world, which may well be right, is we'll actually have less cars because everyone will kind of have common use cars like Uber type without drivers. I mean, we can't do much about that now, but how often do we actually look at whether the life of the roads is changing and those
Yes.
sort of assets?
So I'll probably take part of it on notice, but from what I'm aware is there is a lot of ongoing condition assessment. And if the committee recalls, there was actually some money to allocate for some trial inspecting vehicles. So while they're driving, they get conditions. So there is a lot of ongoing conditions. This is probably and we've been a little bit out of line with how often we do those asset class by asset class. So definitely there'll be a comprehensive review. We'll try and do it like every 4 years for asset class, but in between, should those condition assessments that we come across highlight that the useful life on our books is incorrect, we've got the ability to adjust those as we go. So yeah, it is, yeah, we are getting better at those things, and I suppose it has got a financial impact. So it is really important we stay on top of it as often as we can.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor McGregor?
On page 81, it mentions that there's $8.4 million depreciation in 25-26 financial year. Do we have a comparison with the past 5 financial years?
I do not have it today, but we can certainly
Be provided in future. Thank you.
That's the increase, not.
Yeah, point for the increase.
I just want to see the trend over a 5-year period. Okay. So the next one, this is just with roads. Obviously, do we have an idea about how depreciation is affecting council's bottom line across other directorates, or just for other asset classes, or just roads and?
So we do have depreciation on each asset. So again, I don't have it here today, but we do have those details in the financial statements that council will receive in September. There's some detail there, but yeah, we certainly got those details.
Yeah, could we have a reference to the document it's in, or a table or whatever with those figures in it, please? On page 82, you may have answered this earlier when you were talking to it briefly, but the last review, I believe, for this asset class was in 21-22. What necessitates the reviews? Is it through the organisation? Is it through external? Does it have to happen every 4 years? What's the process for that?
So essentially, in line with accounting standard and consequently audit requirements, is that all assets have to be at fair value. So each year for all asset classes, we need to do a fair value assessment. So if we know of something that significantly impacts any asset class, that actually triggers a revaluation of that asset class in the year. But if there is nothing significant, we just do indexation from year to year. So in between the full reval of asset classes, all asset classes gets indexed up again to reflect that increase in value. In terms of how often we do it, when this first came in many years ago, there was I think it was like a 5-year cycle mandated. Now it's no longer mandated. It just says on a regular basis. So it was a little bit challenging to get back into the cycle, because in 21-22 we had revaluations done, but there was issues at audit time. So in the 1 year we had to do 3 asset classes in the 1 year. So now we're trying to even them out because really the organization has got the capacity to do one full reval of this each year because it's pretty full on. So, we're trying to aim, no longer than 5 years maximum, but ideally every 4 years, we can say that each asset class has had that comprehensive revaluation. It's good because it refreshes our data as well. So not only because we need to do it, but it's a cheap practice anyway.
On page 86, where is it? This page 86 says, in the above table, largest movement in annual depreciation is in footpaths and roads. The biggest driver for this movement is an increase in unit rates, mainly due to inflation since last revaluation. Could you just explain that in the simplest possible way? How's inflation affect the roads and costs of it?
It's the cost of renewal. So essentially the components that go in the formula, it's the remaining life and therefore when you're going to replace it and the unit rate. So with those unit rates, and this is all, that's why we get supported by an external valuer, is essentially if we go to the market to do the part. So obviously in that time, inflation would have moved up and down, but if we compare the unit rates that now compared to the unit rates we would have been used in 21, 22.
So is that if we did it this year, or is that if the asset needs to be replaced in 10 years, a projection of what it might cost in 10 years, or if it was done this year, what it would be
It's
this
the
year?
value as of.
As of, okay, yep, that clears that up for me. The auditor was mentioned before, and an external valuer. Was that audit office or is that someone else?
So the external valuer is APV, so they're used by many councils to do this kind of work. And again, they do their own physical checks of assets as well. And obviously they got access to things like unit rates and things like that. So there is some information that we have provided to them, but then they review that based on their expertise as well. And then essentially they gave us a report and we went through some things. There was the initial draft had like an anomaly in regard to one of the road bits, for example. So we went back to them and so there was a lot of QA as well from our side, but also from their side. So the role of the audit office is to review the process we've undertaken. They take samples, so they take a sample of assets revalued and they look whatever they wish to look at. And then I know they came back with a few questions and we answered them. So that initial review, it was more them asking some questions and clarifying some things. So essentially, I mean, the audit office will just satisfy themselves, I suppose, or not, that the process was robust, that it was independent, and that essentially, ultimately, we are reporting our assets at the fair value. So any of those components that go in it, they may question. As I said, it has been driven by or supported by external experts.
Yeah, and then last one, just following on from what I was asking about before in terms of looking back at previous years and stuff like that. Apart from looking back at ourselves in previous years in terms of the figures and how it's tracking any trends and things like that, do we compare our results to other comparable councils or do we only look at our own at this stage?
Out of this revaluation, we haven't gone back and I suppose it depends what we need to compare because we wouldn't have access, for example, to talk about unit rates that other councils. So if there's another council that has done this exercise this year, because we may not all be doing the same asset class, we wouldn't necessarily have access to the detail about their assets, their useful life and their unit rate. So we can certainly compare. It would be, I suppose the outcome of the comparison would need to be because we don't have the access to them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor McGregor. Councillor Neil, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Yes, I do. I'm a bit curious, having a look at the classes of assets that have been valued, they all went up except for stormwater drainage.
Yeah, so with stormwater drainage, there was an issue with the detention basins. It was more an issue of how they had been previously and how they've been drained now. So that's why there's a drop, which.
There wasn't any major damage to.
No, it wasn't damage. It was more a basis of valuation last time we did this back in 21, 22.
And what class of assets do you expect to be valuing the coming financial?
Yeah, so we're working out the cycle, so it will be either open space or water and sewer. So we just have to align, particularly with water and sewer, with the next IPAD determination. So we're aligning that internally, so to try and do one piece of work that serves. So it will be one of those two asset class.
Okay, best layout, Chair.
Perfect. Any, Councillor Smith?
Sorry, can I just ask, just two general questions? Can you tell me, does this relate to a particular schedule in the audit? Any of that, no?
No, so essentially that, as I said, like we're very, because of what happened a few years ago, there was 3 asset classes done in 1 year. So now there's potentially a bit longer gap between, like longer than what we'd like it to be until we get like.
So it must be captured in the audit.
Yeah, as long as we
somewhere.
do what,
Yeah.
yeah, so in terms of that this was due.
No, just in terms of where that is, so it doesn't relate to a particular schedule or a particular note?
It's just a requirement to report assets at fair value.
Okay,
That's the
alright.
driver, what we have to.
Okay, and just a further question, Chair. Has this gone to Eric or is this due to go to Eric, I guess?
This paper has not gone to Eric, but it will go to Eric.
Okay. So, Chair, just in terms of the functioning of this committee, I mean, a lot of the information before this committee would also be considered by Eric. So is there a process where this committee gets comments back from Eric, or is that just through the minutes of Eric, or is there any kind of, I guess, synergy there?
I suppose before I hand over to the director, I suppose from my perspective, I'd be more than happy for any of these items to be also reviewed by ARIC for their feedback as an amendment. However, from a council perspective, you have anything like that?
I'm probably not suggesting that in particular. I guess if this is going to Eric and Eric has pertinent comments, is there a process where those comments would come back to this committee as well, or would that be picked up in the minutes of the Eric?
It could come back in multiple ways, so it could be picked up in the minutes of the ARIC. It could come back as a formal request to do additional work, so if ARIC had wanted a further report, we would probably send that report via this committee
Yeah.
as well, so that you had visibility of it. And then there's also the councillor representative on ARIC who can provide feedback, so they're listening to the discussion in the room at the time as well, so they would have access to, I guess, that more detailed and direct discussion rather than filtering it through staff as
So
well. So there's multiple options.
Maybe just that general point might be worth some consideration, a later point about how this committee interplays with Eric and, you know, feeds back to each other without creating a new process. I'm not suggesting that be another process, but just that might be valuable at some point.
Councillor Smith, did you have any further questions? One question I did have, which maybe for yourself or Director Loader, would just be around how we, it got me thinking based on Councillor Crowley's previous comments. How do we value, or do we have any value around things like shared drains? Because I know I've had a few constituents comment that they might have, say, a stormwater pit that runs through their backyards, which obviously requires upkeep, which seems to go onto the residents. But do we value those at all?
Yeah, so this is probably one of the complexities when we do the process, is kind of who actually owns the assets. And sometimes we find we have to take assets off our books because through closer look, we find out they're not ours, or vice versa. So I don't have the answer specifically as if it's a shared drain, like half and half, whether we go into that detail. So I can certainly take that on notice, but that ownership piece, when it's not clear cut, it's part of the of what I'm doing this process.
Director Loader, is it common for households to own a shared drain or some part of it? You know, because I'm hearing a few cases where someone might have a blockage at some point, which is affecting people further down and further up, but who pays to make that repair? And if you have to replace the whole drain, is that a council job or do the residents each pay? Is that a common scenario?
I don't think it's,
Maybe not,
sorry.
maybe not.
Well, I know that it does occur. I don't think it's common, but it does happen. You're probably referring to interallotment drainage easements that run through properties where they can't get full to the street.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how that ownership was established at the time of the subdivision and whether, whether they're a council asset that runs through an easement that, that benefits those properties. It's a little bit more of a conveyancing type question as well, in terms of how that relationship works. I'm not 100% sure. I think there are different arrangements, locations, depending on how they were established at the time, but they're not, certainly not, that arrangement's not uncommon in terms of blockages, issues, that they happen from time to time, but they generally cause a problem for everybody along that line. So there's interest in removing them. I'm not sure that it really is Boris's area that around that maintenance piece. So that would be a question for him in terms of who actually has to look after them.
Sure, I might follow that up with him after the meeting. Any further questions or comments on the item? There being none, do I have a mover or do I have a motion, I should say? Councillor Reid, is that yourself?
Motion. Yeah.
Staff recommendation? I'm happy to second that. All those in favour?
See the recommendation.
Unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 1.9, shifting onto local government. So as I expressed to the members of this committee, I think last month or the month prior, there's been a lot of conversation around cost shifting onto local government, particularly with local government in New South Wales and other councils as well, extending commentary around how cost shifting is impacting local residents. That the quoted number that is used broadly across New South Wales is that cost shifting is impacting each ratepayer around $500, which is obviously quite a significant amount. So
It vary from council to council, depending on the services brought in, that the report certainly doesn't.
exactly, hence why that is an average, and I'm seeking in this motion to actually do a bit more of a specific deep dive into how it's impacting Central Coast ratepayers, noting we are quite a unique council. We do have quite a diverse asset pool, everything from our own water authority to 3 dams to 2,250 kilometres of road network. So my idea is to bring forward to the next meeting of this committee an estimated cost of what it's on Central Coast Council, where the findings broken down into the total cost to council and how that affects our bottom line, and then the average cost that equates to a ratepayer. So I'm happy to put that motion. If I have a seconder, Councillor Reid.
Can I ask what value this provides to ratepayers?
Yeah, so I think, local government New South Wales is doing a lot of lobbying around it. And I think, it's something as councillors we have to look at in terms of, what's the message we want to be bringing to the state government around these conversations.
I get that. The question I asked is what benefit is there to Central Coast ratepayers of spending the money to prepare this additional report?
Well, I don't anticipate being a significant cost, but I do anticipate that ratepayers will be interested to know, where their rates are going, first and foremost, because if we're putting an extra $500 onto each ratepayer for a situation where something is imposed on council, I think, we often talk about transparency and good governance, and I think ratepayers would be interested to know where their ratepayer money is going.
But that the whole point is it's going to provide services. The question is about the income, not the expenditure of the rates.
Yeah, and I think there is a population within the community who would be very interested to know that breakdown of cost, and I think they should be able to have access to that. And, you know, for us as councillors, then it's a matter of listening to the concerns that come of residents then and seeing how we should action that accordingly.
Would it appears like you're trying to get the council to pay for your political bullets?
Not at all. You know, I think it's good for councils and it's good for ratepayers, so.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just through you to the staff. I noticed, and I did just check, in previous years, the long-term financial plan, I think when it has that section on risks, it talks about cost shifting, and it has previously put a value on it, an estimate of about, I just looked up the last estimate I could see was about $44 million a year. I then went, so it wasn't in last year's, or it wasn't in the current long-term financial plan, or there wasn't a figure put in there. But in previous years there has, but I'd have to say I did go and check a couple of years before and it was still $44 million. So my question is, has anybody, is there a methodology to that figure that we are aware of? Because certainly I do recall, and yeah, it is used validly for political purposes. The state government shouldn't be cost shifting to local government as much as they do. So I think it is important to have a figure, but there has been a figure that we've used in previous years, and I'm just checking that we did have a justification for that figure, and yes, it may have changed.
GNSW uses a standard methodology, which they then use to compare councils to each other as well. It doesn't mean that it's absolutely comprehensive because it does need to be comparative. And we would suggest that if this motion was successful, then we'd follow that same methodology just to ensure it's consistent.
Okay, so we probably don't know historically the detail of that methodology. But I think it
True, but
included things like the emergency services levy and things like that. Yeah.
So, sorry, so through you, Councillor Wright, Chair. Councillor Smith, you're saying this has come up, but this has been questioned previously.
Oh, it's a significant issue that's raised in local government New South Wales often, and I think the feeling is it's going to get worse because governments at all levels are running out of money. And so the more that they run out of money, the more they shift the cost to another level of government. So I think it is an important issue to get a
It's not
clearance.
new that it's being raised.
Sorry? No, it's not.
So would it be new that we get an answer?
Oh, well, no, there has been a figure. It's just the question of how that figure
Whether
was
it's
arrived at, and if we can break that down, that we can track it, you know, to raise those questions when we need to. I think that would be useful.
It's been an issue a lot longer than the last few years. It's been an
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, well, certainly since the mid-80s that I can personally remember.
Any further comments, questions?
Yeah, look, I'll speak on this as the councillor that did quite a lot of work on this last time. The figures that we were quoted 7 to sort of 5 years ago was sort of 35 to 50 million. That was what was in the documents. I was told that I was going on a Labor witch hunt then, but there was a different state government. So hopefully there's a Liberal Labor consensus on this one because as some of the other councillors said, it's been going on for a long time. It's nothing new. It got out of control under the last state government, which is why we need to do more about it. I'm sure the chair will agree. So let's get the information and advocate for our residents rather than play silly political games. I'm fond of doing so often in this place.
Oh, well, it seems like we have consensus on this, which is always a nice thing to have. So I'll move that motion, seconded by Councillor Eden. Unless we have any further comments, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Fantastic. Perfect. So item 1.10, I understand we have a presentation on this, which I'm quite eager to see. So this relates back to a motion which I actually moved in March in relation to Gosford City Car Park. You know, obviously a lot of exciting things happening in Gosford at the moment with developments. And I know we saw the Funhouse open their new doors last week, which means there'll be a growing need for parking, an ever-growing need for parking, actually. So keen to get a bit of an update on this. Thank you. And this may be a question. I know we always ask this, but do we have this presentation, or is it? We can have it made available tomorrow. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, certainly. Good evening. So just to provide an update to the notice of motion. So the 4 areas that we were asked to look at for the Gosford City Car Park was around the technology. So looking at improving operational efficiencies, in particular around operating times as well. A public briefing session, because there was some interest from local business communities, in particular the Gosford Street Precinct Committee, about how parking may be affecting people coming into those businesses. A review of the parking opportunities at the at-grade car park, and obviously received safety concerns around that Gosford City car park. So just about the technology review, we sort of looked at technology sort of lasting about 7 to 10 years. We started reviewing it. It's an older technology in regards to what is out there on the market at the moment. So it's tickets, it's boom gates. We have subject to breakdowns, and it needs a lot of sort of human intervention. We're currently out in the market at the moment with the tender closing, I believe, in the next week. We're looking, after a recommendation from a consultant, at automated license plate recognition software, barrierless entry, which sort of creates those less friction points, but will also allow us more flexibility in operational hours on weekends. So addressing safety concerns, we have had some safety issues, in particular in and around the Gosford City car park. So we have raised some measures, in particular around lighting in regards to bollards in areas where people were gathering. And there was a period of time where we had security engaged as well, more so from people travelling from businesses into the car park during dark hours. We have also conducted stakeholder engagement, which finished just of sort of end of July. We're compiling all that information, which we'll provide back to the committee with a further report, but we sent it out to all businesses with an ABN that's registered in the Gosford CBD. We also went to the Strip Precinct Committee and obviously advised them. We also had a survey there in regards to operating hours, and also if we were to extend operating hours, what type of fee would they also be looking at as well? There were some financial implications to sort of those security measures. We will capture those because it weren't originally budgeted around security, but we will look at that as well and ensure that anything that is outside of that expenditure is looked at as a Q1 adjustment. Timelines. So we have received the final community consultation results just in relation to that Gosford City car park. The tender closes in August. The tender valuation and the contract award will happen in September. And we assume over a 3-stage process that the technology will be up and running in January to February, and a further report to be provided to this committee in November on the outcomes of that consultation, the feedback, and obviously changes that we can make to assist businesses with the operating hours and attracting more people to the CBD. And obviously any further safety measures or feedback that we've had come through that.
Sure. So a few questions to start. So my understanding from the report is that the costs of the added security are about $60,000. I suppose with a lot of this automation technology, how are you going to actually provide that sense of safety style security for people, given there'll be less people at the centre, you'll be able to drive in and out more easily and stay more easily? How are you going to provide that sense of comfort to the community?
So we do have over 54 cameras that are inside the Gosford City car park. And some of those cameras, those cameras are also directly linked back to Gosford police station. They're not monitored all the time. However, the security have provided a deterrent, as well as we've got some music playing in the public areas that sort of stops people from gathering in those areas. We've increased the lighting as well, but we're doing it over a period of time to sort of provide a bit of a comfort that when people are going through there, but also to deter that antisocial behaviour by having those security guards there. So we will monitor it, and rather than having security there all the time, if we find the need that we need to ramp it back up again, we'll have that obviously that opportunity there as well.
Perfect. And given it is quite a substantial investment, I think from memory about $750,000 to $850,000 in that smart technology. You've spoken about tickets, boom gates as some of the technology. Is there anything else that's part of that package?
We're also looking at doing availability sensors. So sometimes you go into car parks and they have the red and green. We're updating the signage as well. So the electronic signage to which will also have availability of car parking stations. Parking space. Thank you, Councillor Eden. And overall, that package there is what we're going to be able to also provide more statistics and things like that. We don't necessarily have that full access to easily these days. We sort of have to trawl through a lot of data.
In a general sense, are you expecting that these technology upgrades will facilitate more people to come in on a weekend? Because as we know,
Sorry,
I was going to say, as we know, the hours on a weekend are quite limited. If I'm not mistaken, they're closed on Sunday and it closes about 3 p.m. on a Saturday.
correct.
So do you think we'll be able to see more people in there on a Saturday night, for example?
I think it's going to build into other areas around Gosford that's currently happening. So with the new hotel that's opened up, we've also got other activities that are going on, allowing us to have that operational efficiency, being able to open it without actually having concerns around those boom gates failing, the tickets getting jammed and so forth, money not going in. So we'll move to that cashless environment as well. Our cash has dropped by over 60% over the last 5 years. So our cash does not make a great deal of our overall revenue that we have through Gosford City Car Park. I think as assisting that Gosford CBD and that revitalisation, having that parking facility available, I believe over a period of time will definitely make a difference in regards to the utilisation. We're just currently going on what our COVID and coming out of COVID numbers were. And even at the at-grade car park at the bottom of the Gosford City Car Park, our utilisation was less than 40%.
And that car park underneath, because I remember Councillor Daniels and I, when we put forward the motion, did discuss that. Is that open 24/7?
Correct.
Okay. Right.
You're talking about the one near the Gosford station.
The one directly underneath the Gosford City Car Park on Baker Street.
So as you're entering from Baker Street, instead of going up the ramp just to the right to grab a ticket, it's just around the back. There's 34 spots in there. And the first hour, there is free parking outside of business hours. So, and it's a very nominal rate to be able to park there. So on the weekends after, I believe, 12 o'clock, it's free. And outside of business hours, it's free. During the day, we obviously charge, I think it's $2.20 an hour, I believe. And the reason
I have to say, I've driven in there and was not aware that there are two separate car parks. It's certainly not clear from any signage.
and we're hoping to be able to maybe do some line markings to be able to direct people to that parking as well. It is a bit of a difficult one because it's tucked underneath. So when you enter, you kind of want to go up the ramp and take your ticket and go and park.
One final question from me. I've been hogging. So the second part of this motion was, so firstly, better utilising the asset, getting more people in the door, allowing more people to use it. But the second part of it was really around safety. So I suppose, what's your message to the community when it comes to what these technology will mean for making them feel more safe when they come into Gosford City Car Park?
The technology itself won't necessarily provide any type of a safety mechanism. It's really going to be around our area monitoring that and ensuring that we're not having people sort of gathering there or untowards behaviour, antisocial behaviour, etc. And I think we need to continually monitor that to be able to provide that it is a safe feeling of being able to walk through there. And sort of, whether it's notifying police if we see behaviour, or anyone gathering in that area that is going to make necessarily people from the community that are travelling from Gosford into that building.
Perfect. I'm sure everyone else has questions as well. Any questions for Bill? Councillor Neil?
I think this is certainly moving in the right direction, but I'm not sure if it really covers everything we need to do. One of the things that you might be aware of is that there's an attempt to revitalise the night activity in Gosford. And there has been some increase in activity and entertainment and music and the arts and that sort of thing. The period that's suggested here in this motion only says extending it to Saturday afternoons, Sundays and public holidays. It's my personal view, and I'd certainly like to see it encapsulated in the adoption of this report today, is that we also consider the provision of Friday and Saturday nights. It was actually quite hard on those evenings to go in. I think it would encourage people to come in. So I can't move this motion.
I
But
believe that is incorporated in the motion. I don't have
no,
the.
it says Saturday afternoons and Sundays. It doesn't say Friday and Saturday night.
So we're looking open obviously to a late night on Fridays as well. But I think as part of that technology, it's going to give us that opportunity to be able to look at those hours and extend them for a period of time immediately. And then obviously have a look at utilisation through whether it's the at-grade car park underneath and actually trial some later nights to work in with these other events that will be going on as well. And
Yeah,
it'll give us that opportunity.
Yeah, in my personal view, the provision of parking for Friday night and Saturday night is actually probably more imperative than Saturday afternoons and Sundays. There really isn't a huge amount of activity in the CBD at that time, much more in the evening. So if a member of the committee were prepared to amend the recommendation so that.
So the recommendation is just the note to contents. Once we have.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying,
will
but at the
definitely-
moment, you are only considering this motion that's before you. You don't have Friday and Saturday night included.
No, that's correct. We're looking to extend those operating hours over the weekends. That's correct.
So what I'm inviting a member of the committee.
Yeah, I'll do it for you.
Yeah, I think so.
Read out the wording and put it in my note.
That we note basically the recommendation plus and the consideration of opening the car park for Friday and Saturday night as well.
Yeah. I suppose, just from my context, as I said, the person who originally moved the motion, it's certainly my intention, it was my intention at the time that this will be a 24/7 car park.
That's good.
Because, I used the fun house as example. They very well may have an event on a Thursday night. I think, and they did have one last Friday, I believe, or the Friday previously. So,
It was great too.
yeah, there you go. So, I'm happy with that. Well, I can incorporate that into my motion, I guess. Will you put that? Do you have anything else in the presentation? I should ask. Sorry.
No.
Okay. Cool. Does anyone have any further questions before we go back to the motion so we can incorporate that in? Well, you're relieved of your duties, Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll move back to the motion now. And I'm happy to accept Councillor Neil's recommendation to include a line that says a finalised update. And that we seek to make this car park available, I would say 24/7.
Well, the thing is, if we say 24/7, I thought about that, and maybe ultimately, but obviously because of the security requirements of guards, that adds a major expense.
Yeah.
So I thought rather than leaping in and doing it 24 hours, what it may not be is that in my view, the imperative is Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to see dealt with,
Yeah.
as well as the bit that's already in the recommendation.
So I might word that then as, and that we prioritise having the car park open on Friday nights and weekends. Or prioritise ensuring the car park is open Fridays, nights and weekends.
And yeah, I just want to make it clear that it's Saturday evenings.
Public holiday.
And public holidays. Good catch there, Councillor Crowley.
Demand.
Sorry?
To meet demand, it would be nice and flexible.
Yeah.
Do you want to meet demand on there, do you?
No,
I'm happy with that if you like.
I just think you don't necessarily want to be specific. That's
Because if you think about you know, like
As somebody said, if you haven't, you know,
football matches and stuff that go at night time and stuff like that.
right,
I do agree with councillor Neil that the priority needs that, your Friday, Saturday nights is going to be the busiest time. However, we quite often have, I think the Matildas did a round of games on a Wednesday night, so I think,
You're not allowed to mention it.
I think as,
Everyone knows it.
I think as we,
As demand.
yeah, Saturday evenings, public holidays and as demand requires.
that kind of covers what I was thinking.
Yeah, okay. Because, I think as councillor Crowley said, there will be some big events on. And look, for example, some of these adjacent days to public holidays might fall on a Wednesday. For example, the day after Boxing Day could be a Thursday, and there might be a lot of people visiting their families who are living in some of those newer high-rise apartments. So,
We're still debating. What happens with the Mariners match? I mean, I know
yeah,
ages ago,
Generally open when the Mariners.
yeah, but didn't they have one of the clubs or something, or wasn't there some agency that like you paid the money to?
no, so I think what happens is that obviously we can have the staff.
Well, it must be a while ago.
I think you pay a fee to open it at that time. Is that right? Like if the Mariners want to open on a Saturday night, they pay a fee for the car park.
If it's below a certain attendance, they used to, but their attendances are sort of when they are up, because there's enough revenue coming through.
Right.
Expense.
Because I think from memory, it was like $1,500.
Yeah,
The
that's
Mariners would pay that, and that would mean the car park is open. So,
yeah.
well, it's good to know their attendance is up. So that is positive.
A few times I've gone and catch the train.
Yeah. Any further? So you're also happy to second that, councillor Eaton?
Yes.
Happy to have it.
Did I second it? Okay.
Yeah, well, you did at the start.
Okay.
All those in favour, please raise their hands. Unanimous. Fantastic. Item 111 is our next item of business, 2024-25 financial year results, status update. Ms. Galea, would you like to make any comments?
So essentially, this is just a high-level update at this stage, and all the numbers are subject to audit by the New South Wales Audit Office. So essentially for 24-25 financial year, we budgeted 37.9 million in operating surplus. Where we ended up is at 27.6 million. There's a number of factors that impact that, and the type of things are listed on page 97. So the financial assistance grant was a $10 million shortfall that councillors were made aware of through finance reports. There's end of year adjustments we need to do based on actual reports. So in terms of making sure we maintain the right amount for liabilities to do with things like employee costs, for example, and landfill remediation. Council builds in a budget vacancy assumption when we budget for employee costs, and that was slightly less, where we ended was slightly less than anticipated, which is good from a not having vacancy perspective, but there was a bit of an adverse financial impact there. And there's some impacts as well in terms of accelerated depreciation and loss on disposal of assets. There was in 24-25, as I mentioned earlier, any impact on the asset values, where assets, for example, where we've had to write them off our books that impacted 24-25. And we also had water damaged assets. And with water and sewer, because the focus for water and sewer has been that by the time 25-26 finishes, we want to have delivered all the works in line with IPAT. They've brought some works forward. So there will be in the September report to council, there will be a full analysis. So in September, council will get the draft financial statement to refer to audit. That's the formal process, and that would come via ARIC. So they look at the statement, and there'll also be a more detailed analysis on the variation from budget as well. So, so this was very in terms of timing, finalizing these numbers as the report was being written. So that's why it is at this high level. It's just the stage at where we're at the moment. So yeah, in summary, from a capital works perspective, we delivered well against the budget. Total budget was 216.5. We've physically spent 198 million, but there was also commitments, which is where projects were in mid-flight as at 30th of June. The wet weather did in May did impact a little bit on that as well. And at the moment we are reviewing what works in process and any amounts that will need to be in future quarterly reviews adjusted. So overall, in terms of where we are, subject to audit, it is a sound financial position. The variance, so since writing this report, obviously internally we've been unpacking the variances and understanding, are they a one-off variance or are they an underlying trend that we have to build in future plans? So that obviously we can continue to every quarter update our budgets as accurately as we can. So that's probably my summary.
Sure. Just two quick questions. Firstly, if you do have that information handy, would you be able to share that with the committee, just your brief summary, if it's already written out as text?
It's in the report.
Oh, okay.
Just to paraphrase what you said.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you had a concise summary, I'm happy to have that.
Just speak more slowly, please.
Plain text. No, that's fine. I'm fine. If it's in, it's in the report. I can read off that. The other thing I would say is obviously, this is the first end of financial year we've had in 4 years where we aren't in administration. You did say we're in a sound financial position. Is there any further adjectives you might be able to use that might provide a bit more sense of comfort to the community?
Yeah, so
Sounds a really good one.
yeah, I mean, it depends how you look at it. So obviously we're not in the business of making money. But we are a big council with $750 million budget. So it is sound in terms of it's a surplus. So that's the first thing. It's a deficit. And also, whilst it's a big amount for most council, 27 million, for us, for our size council, it's appropriate in the sense of it's actually within a 5% variance of the budget. And I think when we look at items other than things like depreciation, for example, the income and expenditure that we can control is within 1%. So to come that close from whereas at the full year budget and where we landed, we've landed in a good position. So we are comfortable with the number. It's appropriate, probably the best way to say it is appropriate to our council. And that's, I suppose, I mean,
No, I was going to say, if you were doing a media interview, I'd give you top marks for that. You're a very diplomatic answer with some very good figures. So
I'd like to make a comment.
What kind of answer were you looking for, councillor Ryan?
like if she had
Something more exciting.
if she had said we're in a strong financial position or great.
She didn't say that.
Exactly. That's what I said. I was.
No staff member would say something.
Can I just make a comment, Chair, about this? Because I think to some extent, Ms. Galera is selling herself a bit short, because the way this is presented, it looks like we were expecting a surplus of 37.9, and we were at the end of the year, and we only had a surplus of 27.6. But in fact, when we started, our budget was a surplus of 10 million. So really, you sort of, if I was you, talking about my financial management, I'd be saying, well, originally we were only going to make or have a surplus of 10, and we actually ended up with 29 rather than we were going to make 39, we only had 29. So, I mean, I think it is a very good result. I would use the word strong if I was presenting it, but then I'm not a council staff, someone who works for council. I'm a councillor.
You might get the word strong after we go through audit. So there is that to consider as well.
So, but I think what's really important is as well, if we are in a position which is $17.6 million better off than we anticipated budgeting for, there is some argument that there is that amount of money that we should in some respects return to the community by funding projects or issues that are important and have been missed. And I understand that there is often I might call it an adjustment of what would be considered the excess surplus. I know you won't want to hear this. the excess surplus to the community through some sort of workshop or bidding round. And I hope we can consider that, because there are a lot of areas where we haven't been able to provide where the community, and I'm sure other councils would think that it would be advantageous to do so.
Yeah, so from the pure accounting world, the result is the yearly result, and
I know, but
yeah, and in the private sector, cannot do much about it. What we have done here, I think we did it last year from memory, is that council could consider. So behind that surplus, there is a cash, essentially an unspent cash amount. The council could consider quarantining some of that surplus cash. So whether it's the whole thing or part of it, and say, okay, we're going to put that in a restriction, and we're going to do X, Y, Z with it. The way that would work is that when we come and look at the operating budget, the cash will be there. But if we're investing it in an operating type work, that would worsen the result unless it's offset. If that money is put aside.
Explain that again, sorry.
So when we budget a surplus each year, so if we just look at general fund net of drainage, for example, for this financial year, we only have a budget of about 3.2 surplus, right, at the moment. So if council were to consider putting some of last year's surplus aside and spend it on an operating activity,
The deficit.
that would impact the budget. If council consider to put some money aside and spend it on capital, that will be fine. What will be the issue with that, I suppose, or something that it have to manage is capacity to deliver, because we already have quite a large capital works program. There's been some works that have shifted into this year. So in Q1, we'll be doing an assessment of making sure that we maintain the capital budget to what we can deliver. So that would be the risk of council doing that. So it can be done.
So we can basically do capital work for that impacting the budget. Oh, sorry,
The operating result, but there is, as I said, like the capacity to deliver would be something we'd have to
there's
consider.
just a few crucial things that have got lost in the wash that.
Yeah, and again, we are dealing with big numbers. So you had the financial assistance grant, which was particularly frustrating because we did not know which way it's going to go. So we had to leave throughout the year some buffer for that, and it's good that we did, because if
We're
we,
gonna need to do that again this
and
year.
we're gonna, again, that's right. So for this
Approximately 10 million, do you think?
potentially, yeah. And there's already a few big numbers that we need to sort out in Q1 as well. So, so we do need, in terms of that amount, how much is a good buffer, because we are a big council. When things go bad or good, they can be big as well. So we do need to leave a buffer there. But that is an option for council. It would be more, public capital would be a better thing to consider. Considering capacity.
Just,
Impacts on depreciation.
Yes.
just had one other question,
Eventually.
sorry, just on that point about the surplus. Does that surplus take into consideration that we've already put $12 million aside for the dredging program that was announced in June?
That's in this year's.
Oh, sorry, was it 1 point? Sorry, I was thinking it was 12. My bad.
That's in-
Well, that's a lot more dredging than what people
Well,
were
drink,
expecting.
oh, but it-
It's in the current year, 25-26.
And was that taken from the surplus last year?
No, that was part of the original budget. Yeah, that's why the surplus ended up being so little. We only got a $3 million surplus. So that's I'm a little bit uncomfortable with.
Yeah, okay, I can appreciate that. Councillor, you had a question?
Well, thank you. Yeah, just on the fags. So I suppose to predicate it. So we actually run a cash account basis, don't we? Not accrual.
We have to account for things on an accrual basis.
Well, if it's accrual. Oh,
Sorry, not for grants. So grants. So grant used to be in line with everything else, but a few years ago, they've changed how we account for them. And we actually got a mismatch between, so not so much the financial assistance, but any grants.
okay.
So with the financial assistance grant, we have to account for it when we receive it.
Okay, so it's on
Yeah.
a cash basis and everything else is on accrual. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Doesn't it?
so
Absolutely.
But, I mean, as I understand it, we're still going to get the money. It's just before we were
The
getting it
timing, yeah.
basically early and we're proceeding towards getting it late over a few years, probably.
Yes, and so what that means is we've always budgeted 100% a year. And that might have been 50% prepayment, 50% actual payment, 100% prepayment or what, but for the last 9 years or 12 years, everyone's received 100% a year, whether it's last year's or this year's or next year's. But it's been 100% in a financial year. What happened last year is we only got 85%. So it was a 50% prepayment and a 35% component, but it was only 85%. What we think might be happening is that they're slowly bringing down the amount so that there's no longer a 100% prepayment, that it's likely to be a payment in the financial year,
Financial year,
which is probably a good thing. So the industry has been asking for a consistent approach so that we can budget for it, so that we can plan for it, so that we don't have to hold money just in case. So wherever they land, as long as it's consistent, we're kind of happy. But the movement from prepayment to actual year payment means that every year is slightly less than the 100% until they've kind of caught up. So our best guess at this stage is last year they gave us 85%. They might give us 85% this year. And then in a couple more years' time, it'll be all caught up. And
but it says 15%, so it'll take about 6 years to catch up.
no, but they were only giving us partial prepayments. So last year was 50%.
Sorry, weren't you saying the total amount is reducing over time?
It will be in the next few.
It's the timing.
No, well, I thought I understood the timing issue, but I thought you said 85%, 50%, 35%, but that was the total amount.
So because they were paying in advance and then we believe moving to paying in the actual year, to make that movement without impacting councils too badly, they're paying only 85% in advance or and reducing
the end
that
of the financial year.
before the end of the financial year.
The balance the next year. And
Well, not all of it, yeah.
So the
Yeah.
total amount's reducing.
Not over a long period of time, not over say 6 or 8 years.
Over
it'll be
3 or 4
exactly the
years, you're
same.
right.
Yes, over the short term.
Short term it is, but longer term, over 20 years, you'll get the same amount of money.
Yeah.
It's
But
just the phase,
we think it'll be about 5 years. So,
you're just using a long period of money.
yeah, so over say 5 to 10 years, it'll be exactly the same amount of money. But for this period in the middle where they transition from prepayment to post-payment,
What's
it'll
your
be
le-
slightly
Why
less.
are you confident that that will be the long-term catch-up?
Because there's been a lot of industry work done on needing a consistent approach to enable councils to budget effectively.
Yeah.
And there's been some agreement from the government that that's an appropriate thing to request. And because of what they've done, the year just ended. That's setting them up to move in this direction. So it is still it's a guess.
But aren't you saying that at some point in the future, there's going to be a catch-up on a number of years? Is that what you're essentially saying?
No, it's the reverse. We're ahead at the
All
moment.
right, I'll have to get out pen and paper then.
I'll talk to you at the end.
Yeah.
I've been paying it in advance.
It took me about 2 days to actually get my head around it.
It is a bit tricky, yes.
Yeah, it's because because I won't try and explain, I'm sure the director has done a good job, but it took a while for me to get it through my head.
Any further questions, councillor?
Another issue you might want to tackle through notice of motion,
Oh, the
the federal grants,
yeah.
the timing of them, the percentage of GDP, all that sort of stuff that has been going around local government, New South Wales and ALGA for time and a day.
If I was a delegate at ALGA, I would raise that.
I'm sure every single.
Raised every
But-
time.
You don't have to worry, someone's already done it.
Sorry, I did have another question.
Sorry, councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just the $17 million committed in capital works. So that's to sort of drill down that a bit more. So the adopted budget as varied was 316, 11,298, and then with 17 million committed. I mean, so is that just work that had started and we're some way through it, which we've presumably taken up the part we've actually spent, and it's just the remainder of that work.
Yeah, and some of that, if you adding up the numbers, there's some of the, so there's purely the number of purchase orders that we had, so some of that may. There
So
may be a
revision the
portion of
purchase
that would go into.
but it hasn't
future
come in.
year. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So we've
I
just.
just don't think that adds much. To me, I'm sorry, it reads like a bit of an excuse.
Source in the paper.
And accused of bullying.
Yeah, I guess.
But you'll always have that situation.
Yeah, it needs to be drilled down into a little bit more to understand whether, the work's been completed, we're waiting for the invoice to arrive, or where that is actually at in each individual case.
Yeah.
But we haven't done that work just yet.
Any further questions?
The rest of they're fine, and yes, I agree that we've had a lot of wet weather.
Any further questions? Do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll move it.
Do I have a seconder?
Is it staff recommendation?
Yes.
That's seconded by councillor McGregor. All those in favour? Unanimous. Now, item 2.1 relating to the 2024-25 financial year New South Wales Audit Office interim audit report. I know that the next item is marked as confidential. However, there are components of the report that would be valuable discussing in an open session. If Marilyn Vale's watching at home, I know she's been quite passionate about this, and the Central Coast Council Watch team.
Did you say it or someone written it for you?
That's not written, I'm saying. Look, I understand that the community likes transparency, as we always say in this place. So it is important that the community is aware of processes that are in place to provide council's processes. I also note that the report includes the management letter issued to council by the audit office as a confidential document. Accordingly, I would like to deal with the items outlined in the report while still in open session, and only if absolutely required, we would move into a confidential session. Therefore, I move a procedural motion to discuss item 2.1, 2024-25 financial year New South Wales Audit Office interim audit report in open session. Do I have a seconder? Well, I don't think I need one for a procedural. Thank you, councillor Eaton. I now put the motion. All those in favour of the motion, the start of it being held in open session, please raise your hand.
Hang on, can we ask questions before then?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Is that all been teed up with the staff beforehand to have?
Yes.
Okay. Take your word for it.
Yeah, so Director Brackenmiller and the CFO Emma said beforehand they had spoken to Audit New South Wales. Obviously, you can jump in as you see fit, and saw it was appropriate, I believe, not to discuss the attachment as that was provided to us by the Audit Office, but are able to discuss the motion in open session so the community can hear the conversation around it.
And then you get to move into confidential after.
I believe we'll need to. So it should.
Into confidential.
There is no report in the public document,
Not at the moment. So
and is it actually on the agenda?
yes.
Yeah.
So there's certainly issues in the audit that I would like to discuss. What I want to discuss, I will have to refer to the document, so I think we'll probably need to do some stage unless you're happy with me to discuss it. Not in conflict.
I don't think, I might go to the director's advice on that one, but if you are going to discuss items from the document, I believe you may need to go into closed session. Is that correct?
Yeah, that might be safer at this stage.
Okay.
Trying to read your mind what you might ask.
Yeah. Um, with that in mind, why don't we, well, obviously it's up to the voting members, but I'm happy to start in an open session, and if councillor Nels has direct questions relating to that, we can move into closed session as needed.
Promotion, you put it.
So I've raised a procedural motion to have it in open session and only close it if there's something relating directly to that report.
Okay, but you also need a motion relevant to the report to be able to discuss it.
Yes, but I want to move the procedural motion first. If it's approved,
Sorry, I'm not even voting.
then I'll go to the
Makes sense to me either.
Motion on the, so to clarify then, if anyone confused, so this is just a procedural motion noting our intention to deal where possible in an open session. Everybody happy with that?
But if anyone has any questions about the report, which is the confidential attachment, we're gonna have to then go into confidential, yeah? So what questions, who's got a question that can be asked that's not about a report?
Uh,
How can you ask questions about an audit when you can't discuss the audit?
it's only the confidential attachment.
Is the audit, that's the summary of the audit. That's got all the information in it we need to discuss, and there's significant information in it, otherwise it wouldn't be confidential, not that anyone paying any attention at home.
Do you want to add something
In
there?
the report, yes, so in the report on its own provides a summary of the areas. The only thing that's in the attachment that's not here is our response to the issues raised in terms of operationally, what are we going to do as management to address the issues raised? So that's the only additional detail that's in the attachment that has not been identified in the report.
Sorry. The report,
I'll give the councillors a minute to assess their options.
For the record, I'm.
Has anybody else got a report for that item other than the
I've got a
confidential?
confidential attachment with things that I want to
Okay.
ask questions about.
Yeah, it's in the confidential, but
And on the agenda, 2.1 is what we're discussing, right? Isn't it? Or is there another one? Have I missed something? So 2.1 is a confidential item. We can't ask questions about, it. We can't discuss what's in the report. Like, I get the optics of trying to be transparent. But can we just deal with the business we need to deal with, which is the questions about what's in the report?
Sure. You know, I'm happy to withdraw the procedural motion. We can move into confidential session if people see fit. With that withdrawn then, I will move into, I guess I have to move into a confidential session. So are we able to facilitate that through civic support? Sorry.
yep, I'll give you that okay as soon as it's stopped.
You'll still need a motion to move.
Okay, so can I have a motion to move into confidential session? Raised by councillor Eden, I'll second. All those in favour? Councillor, yeah, perfect. So
Yes, sir. Broadcast capabilities are turned on.
Broadcast capabilities are turning on. Welcome back in the swarms of people. I will now ask Director Rakamallara, now we're in open session, to provide an update on what happened in closed proceedings.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd just like to confirm that the committee considered the item 24-25 financial year New South Wales Audit Office interim audit. And upon that review, resolved unanimously that the committee notes the interim audit management letter for the 2024-25 financial year issued by the New South Wales Audit Office, including the identified management actions as provided in this report.
Perfect.
Done.
There being nothing further, I am happy to close the meeting, the time being 8:56 PM. So with 4 minutes to spare, very efficient meeting, everybody. And I do note that the next meeting is to be held at 7 PM on Tuesday, the 11th of November.
Oh, 11.
Which now I think about it, might coincide with the local government conference.
No, it's something.
Okay, well, it does coincide with Remembrance Day, so everybody remember when you're thinking about Remembrance Day that you will also be coming here in the evening.
Do we need to have the committee meet on Remembrance Day? And we honour the dead?
Good.
11 o'clock.
Yeah, look, fair question. If people do have, busy schedules that day, I'm sure we could look to